Mrs. Moasidia, be better known, but I'm correct. Period.
Something not quite clicking in the way that I was looking at my life at that point in time. I just didn't feel like I was in love with, a man or in love with a woman or...
Experienced it a few weeks ago when you,
yes, you did.
tried to hang up the phone with your boy. It was like, yo, she's jumping off the ledge. I gotta go.
So I kind of understood that it was going to creep into the Black community. And so, and slowly but surely it did. And then it started killing my friends. All of my friends that I went to undergraduate with and graduate school with all died before they were 30 years old.
Hello, and thank you for joining your lady or girl on Experience Me. You are about to hear a story and several experiences from one of my incredibly special guests, Sundiata Alaye. He's a dear friend of mine from Washington, D.C. I actually call him most of the time King Sundiata. You'll hear for yourself why I call him that. He's also an author of 3 best-selling books. He is a senior compliance executive with a well-established company now, but prior to his current crucial role there, Sundiata was actually a senior compliance executive for SiriusXM for 17 years. He performed his role with professionalism during his tenure there, but he was fired. We'll talk about that. But most importantly, Sundiata, to me, represents a genuine example of what I consider to be the essence of what fatherhood is to be to 3 talented and spirited young men, Freedom, Peace, and Robert. Sundiata, welcome to Experience Me. So glad to have you with me right now. How you feeling?
Feeling fantastic. Thank you so much, Naija. This is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on the call with you and on your podcast. And by the way, congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that. Sundiata, if I could actually, your name is obviously quite different. I love it, by the way. Can you say, I want you to say your entire name, if you could, please.
So my name is Sundiata Alaye.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you. It is, in its combination, means fit to be king.
Fit to be king. And I know there's a significance. So if you could tell us, it's from some tribe in Africa, correct?
Yes,
could you tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. Sundiata Kayate in the 1400s was a Black conqueror. He was an African conqueror who established places like, Mali and Timbuktu. So the name goes back centuries, the name Sundiata. And so, of course, my middle name and my last name come from, my ancestors. So it's a significant name. It's a name that a lot of people are tongue-tied to pronounce, but I'm always very careful to let them pronounce it instead of saying, well, it's just something I can call you for short. There are family members who can call me for short, but anything outside in friends, close friends, but anybody outside of that must pronounce my name.
Okay, and why is that?
The significance is that, our history in this country has always been one that has not been lengthened, but shortened. Everything is a paraphrase with her. And so our names are so significant because, it connects us back to our roots in Africa, back to, where we belong. And so anybody who wants to shorten my name has to be corrected with the same explanation that I gave you. And that usually falls upon white America that likes to shorten my name in that way.
Okay. I understand that. I get that. I totally get that. Thank you for explaining that. I love, I love your name. It's so powerful, so so rich in culture and yeah, it's just so powerful. And so are you. You're also, you're welcome. You're also an author, correct? Of 3 books, right?
Yes.
Best-selling author, 3 books. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're
It's
welcome.
been a long, time coming. It's been a long road to, of even, deciding to be a writer. I'm a scientist, and that's where my degrees are in engineering. But, I think every one of us, everybody that, has lived an experience is also an author. I just chose to take this, what I've learned about life and put it onto paper, to kind of share the wisdom that I've learned and the wisdom that I've earned.
Okay. And how do you walk that?
Well, it's always a walk of promise, right? I don't believe, when anybody says, well, they touch potential. I never ever believed in potential because people live and die with potential. But when you have promise, you can sort of see a road ahead of you. And, that, initially sparked in me during the AIDS crisis in the world, when we first, heard about this disease. I was in graduate school at the time, and slowly but surely, went from, this is affecting a certain population of people in San Francisco. And it was, called something like GRID at the time. But I knew, because my grandfather always said, when America gets a cold, we'll get the flu. So I kind of understood that it was going to creep into the Black community. And so, and slowly but surely it did. And then it started killing my friends. All of my friends that I went to undergraduate with and graduate school with all died before they were 30 years old. And there were 5 of them. And at various points of their illness, because of the stigma associated with AIDS, many of them could not go home. In fact, 4 of the 5 could not go home. Their parents were adamant that they could not go home. Regardless of the fact that they were, heterosexual or same gender loving, they didn't want the stigma of AIDS around them. And so I, at one point, was taking care of 4 brothers in various stages of their illness in my home. That in itself, taught me a lot. One of the things was about advocacy. None of the facilities that had been established, the money that was being raised and, the governmental money that was being poured into AIDS research and support in the communities was not directed or intended for the Black community. And so when I'm trying to get services for these brothers who are, sick and, and frustrated and dying, and, it was a very devastating place for me to be, because I'm thinking there, but before the grace of God goes you or I. And I know these brothers. I know their hearts. I know their souls. We have spent years together, trying to come to terms with a lot of things in our lives.
What time? I'm sorry. What time period was that? When did that happen?
We're talking, late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, when it was more prevalent and killing people by the hundreds.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Absolutely. And so that's what finally got me there. I was thinking about things that I could help to change in the community, but at that time I was just so devastated at loss. At one point I was going, to funeral after funeral after funeral, and sometimes even squeezing them into lunch hours. And so I was devastated behind that, and there was a sense of helplessness that had overwhelmed me. But what ended up happening was I felt like I'd been in D.C. since college. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I came right here to college, and then decided at that point I've got to get out of D.C. for a while. And so literally I took a dart and threw it at a map. It ended up somewhere in Kentucky, and I said, nope, we're not doing Kentucky.
No, you didn't. Are you serious?
That's exactly where, and one of the
like coming to America.
Exactly. I ended up in Memphis, Tennessee. but I knew I couldn't just move and, do nothing. So I had to find a job. So I went to work for the corporate headquarters of Federal Express, FedEx, in Memphis, Tennessee. And I stayed there for a while. But one of the biggest reasons for me moving was to write a book. I needed to write my experiences down and everything that I've learned about life and living. And so that's how I got the bug. So I had no publisher. When I decided to write the book, I had no writing book experience or anything like that.
Is this book that you're talking about, The Power That Shapes My Way?
The first book is called Empty Promises, Private Pain, A Light Out of Darkness.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So that was the first one. And that's the book that actually won the James Baldwin Award for Outstanding Accomplishment in the Arts. So I came out of the gate, not knowing what I was going to do, and then won that award for the book. So, and it reached a lot of people. And one of the most profound things about writing is that, not only are you, trying to reach an audience, but you want the audience to reach back, and reach back they did. And so they had a bunch of questions about things that I highlighted in the book and things that, they said they experienced, but they never thought of. And, what would you say if? And so, through my publicist and through my assistants, I was getting all these emails, and I made a promise to answer every single one of them back. And I did a good job of that. It just got a little overwhelming. So I then decided, okay, I'm going to take all these questions and I'm going to answer them in a follow-up to the book. And that's the book, The Power That Shapes My Way.
Okay.
Right. So, and that just kind of took, from where I started at Empty Promises, Private Pain, because that book has, a lot of different exercises in it, to explain to people, how do you move from pain to peace? How do you, deal with the loss of a friend? How do you deal with your own illness? And I'm not speaking specifically of HIV and AIDS. I'm talking about any illness, family issues. What does, I have a chapter, on sex and sex education of the mind. So there were a lot of things that I know, that I wanted people to understand. And, that still, is something that, I get asked to speak on even to this day.
Wow.
So it's lingered, I got a lot of emails, Naja, and a lot of letters, people who've written to me saying that your book really changed my life. In fact, I became best friends who, to this day, who came to one of my book signings here in Washington, D.C., who he actually lives in California. He's from California. And we've been best friends ever since. But he was the first person that came to me and said...
who are you speaking of?
Ivan. I'm speaking to Ivan.
Ivan. And who is that exactly?
So Ivan's a friend of mine. Ivan lives in L.A. He's a brother who's from L.A. He did a lot of work in the community, a lot of the work that I was doing here in Washington, because, after the book, had taken off, I decided that, this calling was a little too strong for me at the time to just, be a writer. My name had become a little bit, known in the HIV and AIDS area for the advocacy work I was doing just through the book alone. So I came back to Washington, D.C., and I became the executive director of the National Minority HIV and AIDS Coalition. And it was, one of those decisions where I just said, okay, I've got to leave corporate America because this isn't doing me any good anymore, at least in this moment. Mm-hmm. Still a lot of work to do, and we've got to work on that. So I took over the AIDS organization, HIV and AIDS Coalition, and, grew the budget from about 400,000 to about 200. About 2 million my first year, and left it in a really good place. But one of the biggest things that I'm very proud of is that we worked with BET when it was Black-owned BET at the time to answer the corporate call to Black America on HIV and AIDS education and prevention. And so you probably will remember, and many of your listeners will remember, that there was a Wrap It Up campaign.
Yes.
Yes. So that was my work with BET.
Wow.
Develop and launch that program.
Yeah, that was a pretty, that was a major campaign. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Vividly.
AJ and Free, who I love to this day. They did an amazing job. And then, you know, we had a big launch here in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy, John F. Kennedy Stadium. Mm-hmm. The BET brought in all the talent. And I think on that day, we tested about 1,700 people in Washington, which was huge at the time.
Wow.
Huge.
In one day, you said?
Yes, in one day. In one day. We called that all the resources, you know, because there were a lot of organizations in D.C., you know, that were focused on the Black community, the left out others of us. And so we called all of these organizations together, and we got rolling. And so we made a dent in the history of HIV and AIDS in this city. And their work continues on, right? I mean, so it has not stopped. Mm-hmm. Us Helping Us is one of the other premier organizations in D.C. that was started by a brother, Dr. Ron Simmons, who has since passed, you know, but his legacy in advocacy and healthcare for same-gender loving men of color and for communities of color continues on. So I say all that to say that I started a number of programs at this organization. Every program that I would start, I would give it to Ivan to start in the LA community, you know, out in the California, Los Angeles, California area. You know, one of the biggest programs was last night a DJ Saved My Life. So I went out to all of the clubs here in DC. I got the buy-in from the club owners or the club supporters or the, you know, and especially the DJs, because that was the audience I wanted to target. You know, so at the end of the night and all the drinks, this is the last song you will play. And we'll have teams of people just go out into the crowd and hang out and hand out condoms. Very successful program we ran here, and twice as successful in Los Angeles. We became, you know, sort of partners in crime. And so today he is still, you know, one of my best friends. I'm blessed enough to have a handful of best friends, and he's certainly one.
Well, you're deserving of best genuine friends because you're so amazing. Just with,
he's so sweet.
Just as a friend. Yeah, no, you know, I feel that way about you. That's why I call you King Sundiata. I got to go to the Hailing Table. I want to let my listeners be aware when I go to DC, and most of the time I stay at King Sundiata's home, beautiful home in DC. But he has this huge table out in the back at the patio. And when I come there, or when, you know, family and friends gather at his home, which he often has little parties and events. And we all sit around the table. We call it the Healing Table, where we all speak about our the good stuff that's happening in our lives, but we also talk about the things that are obstacles in our lives. And Sundiata, I don't know, for some reason, he always becomes the center of attention. That's why we call it the Healing Table, because when Sundiata speaks, you just have to listen because it's so profound and impactful. So thank you for
you are so welcome. But I just
being in my life.
Thank you, because I appreciate you for allowing me in. But I do want your listeners to know that the Healing Table is just that. And so in order to help heal, because one of the things I know is that you're always teaching what you need to learn. So when you guys come sit around and you start telling me about things that you're experiencing, we get into some heavy conversations, and sometimes they're not very comfortable because I have to challenge the psyche The way we have always
Oh,
thought.
listen, I experienced it a few weeks ago when you,
Yes, you did.
tried to hang up the phone with your boy. It was like, yo, she's jumping off the ledge. I gotta go.
I said,
Oh, that was
I can't talk now. I
hilarious.
gotta get her. She's about to jump off the ledge.
You brought me back. I had a woosah moment. So, I'm good. I'm clean. So thank you.
That's what the healing table is about, right?
Yeah.
So we're blessed enough where I have one outside and I have one inside. So
Yeah.
no matter what the weather, we are going to sit at the healing table and we're going to talk. So it's always about good times when we get together, because everything is not always, bleak. Everything, even when we think it's a problem, an issue, or an obstacle, there is a blessing hidden there. And my only point is to try to help you recognize it, just by peeling back the layers of our prior experiences, right? Because that's what builds us in helping us to process in the present. It's all built on our past traumas or our past happiness. But we're so used to trauma, we don't know how to get to happiness. So we have to address the past only to acknowledge it.
I dug into mine, so I'm good. I mean, I have my moments, but you know what? I know my foundation, so I find my way back real quick. I don't have nothing to worry about that.
Absolutely.
I want to actually just mention all three. You missed a book. It's Sweet Cornbread and Hot Tea, right?
Sweet cornbread and hot green tea.
Hot green tea, sorry.
Hot green tea.
What is that about? Such an amazing title. I love it.
Well, so the title itself comes from the fact that whenever I write, I'm going to have these sweet cornbread, from the box at Jiffy, because I don't know how to make it, the other, homemade style. So I always have hot green tea and sweet cornbread. I was in an interview talking about my forthcoming book. I know I was a year out from completing the book, but the guy said, well, what do you do? I thought he said, what are you doing? But he was asking me, well, what's its title? And I said, well, I'm eating sweet cornbread and hot green tea. And he was like, oh, that's an amazing title. I said, you know what? I think it is.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, so I took it. I mean, it is my recreation, sweet cornbread and hot green tea. So this book is a collection of poetry, of short stories, of prose, and just thoughts.
It ain't just thoughts. You left out some steamy stuff out. There's some steamy hot stuff. Yeah, I'm not letting that go. Let's go there. No, I'm just playing. Yeah. We don't have to go there. But there are some steamy stuff in there, Sundiata. So I'm not going to let you neglect that. It sure. Talks a lot about love in your feelings and dealing with your inner struggles of who you were at that time and trying to find out how to let that out. Please explain that to us.
Absolutely. So, I was born in, New York. I am a Black man, and we know how our community feels about being Black, male, and what the general society considers as gay. So I don't use gay as a term to describe who I am, because it's really a construct. And when in the Black community, if you want to have a conversation around it, gay always just sort of stops or puts a wrench in the wheel of a conversation. So I never say gay. Images that pop up in people's minds are like the flags and the walking in parades and chaps, with asses hanging out and that sort of thing. So that's not how I vision it. And let me just say for the record before I get letters that that's perfectly fine. Self-expression is the best and the most important ownership of yourself, how you express yourself. I don't use the word homosexual because, when you say homosexual, everybody automatically, not everybody, but people tend to go to sex. And, it misses the whole meaning. So when I say same gender loving man of color as my adjective, it's exactly what I mean, because love is injected. And you can't escape love either from the outside looking in at it or from the inside looking out. So same gender loving man of color is how I describe it. And I'm taking you along this journey is because I had to find myself in all of that. I was a college athlete. I was an athlete in high school. I was an athlete in college. I, was also studying engineering, but I was also swimming. And I just never felt, completely like I was always present. I didn't feel like I was present. It just seemed like something was going on. Of course, I had girlfriends, all of my life and that sort of thing. But there was still something that was, not quite right for me, not with me, but for me. And so I started to discover.
I don't want you to leave there yet. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what do you mean by that? Something wasn't right? Because that's key.
Something wasn't. Yes, it is right. It is. Something wasn't right for me. I didn't think that anything was wrong with me. I just felt like there was something not quite clicking in the way that I was looking at my life at that point in time. I just didn't feel like I was in love with, a man or in love with a woman, or, I started noticing an attraction towards men, but, it had never stopped. It had never gone on behind, that brother's wearing something, sharp outfit. I like his shoes, or, the haircut is dope, stuff like that, but nothing ever gone past that. So I just sort of left it alone. I recognized early on that, I don't have to make any decisions about my sexuality right now. I'm just trying to get these degrees and get the hell out of school.
Right. No, I feel you on that. The pressure.
I was in Washington, D.C., and I met all sorts of people. I met same gender loving men, same gender loving women. Bisexual men and women. I was on Howard University's campus, which is where I graduated from, and in Washington, D.C. So there was a lot to see and a lot to experience. Mm-hmm. And so, I just felt like, I can sit here in this place where I am comfortable, and knowing that life is fluid. And because life is fluid, everything else is fluid, including sexuality. So I didn't make any decisions about anything. I just, said, I'll date, whoever I feel like dating. So I didn't go through this, this magnificent trip that everybody goes through, this gut-wrenching, realization that maybe I am same gender loving. I just sort of let it happen the way it was supposed to unfold. And it just so happens it did, And,
how did you feel?
Relieved, because I was one of the blessed brothers who was able to, fall into the arms of another brother who almost felt the same way, confused about his sexuality, not really sure. In fact, we really did not like each other when we first met, because we were, when I came to the college, he was, captain of the team, and he was really kind of looking at me like I was coming to take his position, which I was, but I didn't need him to know right away. So we didn't really get along for a couple of years, but after all of our walls came down, and I don't mean, walls about sexuality, I mean, just being insecure Black men in America, knowing what we have to face beyond the walls in Howard University. We became friends. I understood, where his hardness was coming from. It was, based on his past, his family, the way they treated him. He always felt like the one that was left out, and so he was angry all the time.
Because of his sexuality, his preference.
Not because of his sexuality, but because of it. I don't need to get to that first. I think he had to get, first of all, to kind of reconcile the anger that he had and the insecurities brought on by the anger, because his family pretty much abandoned him. Now, he had a mother and a father. They were very successful, but he was just sort of a showpiece every now and then. And he was pretty much with his grandmother, or an aunt. So he always felt like he was pawned off, and that his parents didn't love him and they didn't care about what he did. There was also a point in time where he attempted suicide, and they called the ambulance and didn't show up at the hospital. You know what I mean? So it was things like that got him into the place he was. But I understood it. When you understand yourself well enough, you can see the suffering into other people. So I wasn't really mad with him or angry, but I just tried to stay out the brother's way. You know what I mean? When when we weren't getting along. But I think, in fact, I know that my coach recognized the potential in both of us. And so he made us room together one year. And during that year was the same sort of situation. Your half is here, my half is here. And but one Thanksgiving, he was supposed to go home. I think we were in junior year at this point. He was supposed to go home, and his parents called him the day before and said, well, we're going off to I think they were going to West Africa. We're going to Ghana, but they didn't invite him. And so he was crushed. And so I just said, look, man, I'm taking the Amtrak, up to New York. I don't want to leave you here. So why don't you just come with us? Just come with me, meet my family, have dinner. We're only going to be there 3 days. And I talked him into coming, and he had an amazing time. Since then, our relationship transformed. But it was another year, in our senior year, before we recognized, that this bond that we were sharing had developed into so much more. And the happy ending is that we ended up, coming out to each other, which was important. And
so that was your first time with the gentleman. Okay.
Yes, that's right. And we were together for 7 years. Right after that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. Oh wow.
It is an amazing story.
You're friends with him today? Still?
We are friends. Yes, we are friends. He still lives in the Massachusetts area.
Okay.
And, I see him occasionally at reunions, but life has gone on. But what we do know is that we would not be the people we are had it not been for that experience with us. Even, the love-hate relationship that we shared before we recognized that, we've been partners for 4 years, whether we know it or not.
Right.
We just hadn't consummated it. So it is a beautiful story. It's actually in Sweet Cornbread and Hot Green Tea.
Yes.
Yes. I had to, finally write about that experience. Yes.
I'm very familiar.
Yeah, I'm so sure.
So I'm glad you talked about that, because that's significant for the starting point. As I hear other stories of same gender loving, there's always that spark in that moment when you finally realize, like, this is it, right?
Yeah,
it seems like
absolutely.
that's what happened to you as well.
It did. And then it happens to a lot of people. Sometimes, there's varying degrees of acceptance, of self-acceptance, because you got to get there first. And then the next part of it is that then you have to explain this to those, the family that you've chosen, your friends, around you. And then you got to take this to the doorstep of your parents or your sibling or that sort of thing. So that process of coming to realization can be a lifetime process for many, as you understand. There's a lot of people who what I call living inside the outside closet, where a lot of people know that they're same gender loving and their close people know, but not too many people after that.
Mm-hmm. It's just so important, not even with same gender loving. It's just life, right? When we deal with obstacles or we deal with something that we have to confront with ourselves first, we have to be confident and know what that means for us, define it for us, so that the outside people don't try to come in and tell us what to do with our newfound information.
That's right. And
whatever it is.
Whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Everybody has an opportunity to define themselves by their own terms.
Exactly.
And you owe no explanation to anyone, about who you are, where you are, what you're doing with your life, how you're doing it, unless they find that you're in some sort of danger or mortal danger or any kind of
or
thing.
hurting somebody else, correct?
Or causing pain to someone else. Exactly.
Yeah. I never understood why people get so invested how other people live their lives if they are not hurting someone else, for one, in themselves. And even if you are hurting yourself, then that's yourself. You are responsible for yourself. So I never really got that. And it just really it aggravates me that people are so invested in what you do with your own life if you're confident and comfortable with that decision.
There are a lot of reasons. One of the main ones that I have discovered over the course of this many years of my life is that, when you are looking out at people and you're being critical of them, it is only because they are reflecting things in you that you have not been able to recognize or address in yourself. And so it is like...
Very well said, Sundiata, because I believe that as well. So I'm glad you actually answered what I was saying. Thank you.
Absolutely. We don't, because none of us are anybody's judge. But normally what I've found is that people, who are pointing to you and so invested in what you are doing and who you are with and, are only, people who have not been able to reach a level of confidence and self-love in themselves. Mm-hmm. Because they don't know, if I really cared and concerned about myself with all of the, minutia that I've got to get through, I don't have time to worry about what that person's doing.
Correct.
I'm still focusing on getting myself back. I think, and this is no judgment because we're all at, the starting line of a spiritual race for our own development. So we're all at the starting line. Nobody's, better than the other at the starting line. But some people have made more progress in understanding, what it is that, the meaning of life really is, and that really is the answer. If any of you, your listeners are interested, the meaning of life is to love. And that's it.
Absolutely. And grow within yourself. And that's love right there.
That's right. Yeah. And it's no doubt that we've all, have our rivers to cross. We've all had trauma and experiences that we'd rather not have. But if we look at what came out of those experiences,
I think you have to learn love, though, for yourself. You have to learn that. You're not just born with love. You're born with love inside you. But I think that as an individual, you have to actually learn to love yourself, especially in this kind of climate.
That's exactly right. Because when we were born, we were just born, in love, out of love, and that was all we know. But
and sometimes that bond isn't even love. So what happens there? If you know what I mean?
At the development of life, it's love because it's a miracle. Now
correct.
The situations that we're born into may be different, right? They may not have been like these two people were together and they were in love. And, we know that not to be the case in a lot of cases, but we are born in love and out of love. And our mere existence represents that. Everything else we've piled on, it's because we've learned these behaviors. Just like, even black children and white children. White children are not born racist. That's a learned behavior. We're not born fearful. It's a learned behavior. And then our experiences teach us about exactly what, the world really is. We're in a lot of ways a big pile of neurosis, and it takes a lot kind of, peel back the onion to get to the center and to the core of who you are and surface that love that you were born into and created out of.
So Sundiata, who are you?
Wow. So, I am I am a son of God. I know that I am, perfectly made. I know that my love is who I am, and it's what I operate from. Love has no opposites, right? So I am all of God's love, and everything else that allows me to be. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. I wanted to actually stick on that for a minute.
Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because, again, like I said a moment ago, it takes us a long time to get back to that love. Like you said, you got to learn to love yourself. When we're born, again, we're not born with anything but love, but it's all the insecurities, and it's all also, the things that we learn from well-intentioned parents and adults and, elders in our community that give us things that sort of make us fearful of certain things. I'm not talking about, go to that neighborhood, don't leave your drink unattended if you're in a club. I'm talking about the things that we hear and that we witness and that we see that cause us to pile all this fear upon us, and the things that sometimes are said to us. Children are very impressionable, but they're also very cruel. So the learned behaviors they find in their homes that they're bringing into, our young lives and our young scenarios just causes a lot of pain for us. I've not noticed it so much more than with young Black girls who are not only target, but also scapegoats and looked over, the most, overlooked race of people in the world is Black women. So there's a whole lot of rip that we have to get our sisters
listen,
across.
I have a Black child, a Black young lady, so I'm not going to let you just slide by that one. I want to hear what you mean by that.
Well, you can look at the history of the world where Black women have also, all but certainly been written out of all kinds of history. When we go back, through the slavery, it was the Black women who cared for not only their children, but, the children of the slave master, taking care of their house and sometimes being their bedmates, and expected to give away their children, so that they can go into forced labor. You think about all those times of slavery, and we've gone through 400 years of slavery, we went through 100 years of Jim Crow, and then we went to 50 years or 60 years of the Civil Rights Movement. And at the forefront of all of that, even when there was a male that was present, they were working all of the backstage issues that got this Black community where it's supposed to be. And so that's that part of it, The other part is you look at Black women now. If a young Black girl goes missing in a community, you do not see it on CNN and every other channel every 15 seconds. The mortality rate of Black women in childbirth is the highest among any race of women in this world. The murder rate of women, of Black women, is one of the highest in this world. So Black women have never been considered. They've been disrespected, and it's up to us, to make sure that they have a secure foundation, that they know that they can do anything that they want to. And then we have to watch out about our Black women. We have to watch our Black men and women. We have to watch our Black nieces and daughters. It's a calling to us that we have to protect this. And this is not by just design. It was, the government that, destroyed Black families. This was all a part of the plan since they brought us here from Africa. So we got to think about those sort of things, the systemic racism that has brought us to this place, even now where everybody, seemingly losing their minds, with the way that white America is coming out in full attack against, Blacks and other, people of color in this country. I'm not just saying us, but we get the majority of it because it was always a plan and always a design.
Absolutely. And we know that it will continue to be a plan and a design. We get that. I thank you. Yeah. Thank you for
me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you for laying that all out. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go ahead.
I was saying that but it's the same thing on the other side as it relates to our little Black boys and our Black men.
Well, without a doubt, we know that. We see that every day.
That's right. And, it not only goes from a point of attack, but it also goes to the point of, nobody was watching our little boys. We just assumed that they were safe. I did a event years ago when I was at the HIV and AIDS organization, where I had a conversation with Sundiata in 3 series. So it was conversations with heterosexual Black men, and then I did another series of conversations with heterosexual Black women, one with same-gender-loving Black men, and then one with heterosexual Black men and women. One of the things that came out in all of those categories is the amount of molestation that almost surprised, me and my entire staff and everybody who works in this field. We gathered the statistics from that. There were a lot of young girls who were molested when they were very young, and something that I had. You
mean molested very young within their homes or outside of their homes in another environment?
Well, one of the questions we did ask is that were you familiar with the person who molested you? I can't call the statistics right off of my head, but I certainly know that it was more people who knew their attackers than not. It may have been a neighbor. It may have been somebody who lived in the neighborhood. It didn't necessarily mean it was happening in the house or with uncles or something like that, but they were familiar enough, and the number of young brothers, and I think we had about 800 people in attendance, and I think it was about 82% of the brothers in the heterosexual, and about 72%, if I'm calling these numbers, of the brothers who were in the same gender loving Black conversation series were all molested at some point, before they were 13. I think 13 was the stopping point for us, based on a number of other studies that we had done. So, I watched my boys like a hawk when we were there. We had, drills. We had words that if somebody tells you that I'm sending them to pick you up, ask them what the word is. So we had a secret word in the house. And if they didn't, then you run. You run, you scream, you holler, you get away. And I would not let my children, around people that I didn't trust. Not that people I didn't know, but people that I didn't trust, certainly. But they're also very verbal. I've always been very honest with my boys. They've always known who I am, and they've always respected me as their father and their Black father, although, my boys are adopted and I have custody of them. But, the same holds true for our Black boys and our Black girls who eventually are going to grow up to be Black men and Black women. Mm-hmm. So we have to understand the psychosis that's associated with that and start getting the kind of help that they need, and we all need it. Counseling is not, anything that, causes shame like it used to back in the day. We're having open conversations about therapy. We're having open conversations about, speaking to someone that, just to make sure that you are okay, that you feel like you are okay. And I hope, Naja, that you use this platform to make sure that those messages are getting out as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've started this platform, one, because I enjoy what I do. I'm a communicator. Yes. I love talking, and I've been a writer for a very long time. And I started this platform by sharing some of my writings. I have a catalog of writings that that I have been writing for many, many years with the intention of one day doing something with it. And that will come more in the future. I'll just leave it at that stage right there. I'm sorry?
We're looking forward to it. I said we're all looking forward to it.
Yeah, the people that know what's going on, they they know behind the scenes of what's going on. But as far as experience me, like I was saying, I pushed out some of my poetry and just some of my spoken word and some of my frustrations, some of my highlights as well. Not always frustrations, but it's the obstacles, the frustration, sometimes the sadness, and how you break through all of those is what makes people listen and have some sort of a palpable experience by hearing other people's stories. One of the best ways that I overcame some of my obstacles was reading. I just went to the library and gathered every kind of nonfiction book to figure out what was going on with me. So if it wasn't for those authors, way too many to mention, but those authors are one of the reasons why I'm here speaking and having you speak and share your experience as well. So, more to come on that other side, though.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we're looking forward to that. I've been arguing about this for years, but I think that when we start listening to other stories, that's important, right? Because you have to know, number one, that, you're not alone and in your thoughts and in your beliefs and, why you're feeling this way. And you were talking about frustration and, and sadness. And these things are natural emotions for us when we are. That's
what gets you going.
That's right.
If you pay attention to it in the right way.
Yes, but they are not supposed to always live with us. They're not always supposed to visit us often. They can come back as a reminder, but we don't want to get stuck in it. Right?
Well, no, absolutely not. But the outside world, there's always going to be something. Like I tell my daughter, if you pass this obstacle that you're going through right now at this moment, get ready for the next one, because you're going to have a breather and then the next one's going to come. There's no one. I don't care how much money you got, what your status is. There's always going to be something there. So you just got to learn how to manage it and, find your way through it.
And I hear what you're saying. I just have a different approach to what that looks like.
What's your approach? That's okay.
Right. The approach is that, there are always things that come, but not always are there an obstacle or a barrier or something to cause you harm. It is really the way that we see it, the way that we interpret what is happening to us.
Your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're doing here is that we have to make sure, you said it at the beginning of the show. I got you together because, what did you say? I gathered myself, right? Mm-hmm. And what that means when you gather yourself, it's the miracle. It is the miracle. It's not, glitter and light shining from heaven. The miracle is the shift that you make from fear to love. Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. When you get through these issues and when you're going through these issues, you have to sit back for just a half second and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling about this.
In that moment.
In that moment.
And that's all it is a moment.
It's a moment. And all you say to yourself is, this is how I'm feeling, but I'm willing to see it differently. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that, Naja, allows the Holy Spirit to come in and give you a completely different interpretation about what's
just
happening.
Punch you in your face.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. My grandfather
I'm dead
always
serious.
told me.
You think I'm trying to crack a joke? I'm dead serious. Right. That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like in that moment. But when you say, I'm willing to see it differently, and you don't have to say it out loud, and it doesn't take 2 minutes to sort it out. If you say in that moment, this is how I'm feeling, but I'm willing to see it differently. If you're willing to see it differently, then it happens. My grandfather raised me under one of the many principles that he raised me under. And one of those things was, it is in your passivity that your safety lies. I'll say it again.
I was going to ask you to do this.
It is in your passivity where your safety lies. And what that means is you don't always have to act and respond to anything so quickly. It's okay to say, I'm feeling this way, but I don't want to. It's okay to say, I'm feeling this way, but I'm willing to see it differently.
Right.
It's okay to say, I don't like this feeling and I don't like what was said, but let me figure out why this has brought something out of me that makes me want to punch you in the forehead.
Right.
And then you will discover it's not what was said. It was what reminded you of what was said to you way back then.
Exactly.
That you never healed.
Exactly. But you just said it in a different way, but I mean, I'm listening to you and that's exactly what I meant when I said manage. Like, you have to accept what's going on in that moment because it's there, it exists. But what are you going to do to manage that? Like, how do you move around that? Get it away from you. Get it out of your thoughts. How are you? A friend of mine, Steve Rayner, and I'm actually going to have him on the show as well. But I was saying, change the way you think. And he was like, no, shift. Use the word shift. So now I'm trying to train myself to say shift, which is a better and more powerful word in a different perspective than change.
That's right. But I also want to say this one important thing. Mm-hmm. The universe hears everything we say.
Exactly.
Everything.
Exactly.
And so if you are advising someone like your daughter, who I love very much, that, there's going to be more, we don't want to plant that seed. What we want to say is, if you can handle this one in the way that you recognize it is in your passivity where your safety lies, whatever the experiences that come after, you'll start to recognize the blessing, or you're going to start recognizing the pain is surfacing.
Right.
And it's surfacing not because it's coming up now. Healing doesn't occur in the past. Right? Healing occurs in the present. So if it's still popping up, it means it wasn't done so bad.
I like that. Healing occurs in the present. That's a good way to say it.
That's right. The past is the past. It's over. We can't do anything about it.
It absolutely means nothing.
That's right. And so it's here. The only thing that we remember of our past is love. Mm-hmm. That's all we remember is love. That's all my memories of the past. I just choose love.
Thank you for saying that.
All of the other experiences were nightmares that I helped to create. Because I wasn't operating from a sane mind. I wasn't working from a loving and kind mind.
We create our existence of how we want it to be.
We create our own experiences.
Right.
We create our experience. And so we have to be very careful.
Right.
Because if the universe hears it, and so if you say that, I can't get anything right, everything that is going to be sent to you is going to be sent to you, confirm that you cannot get anything right.
Exactly. Well, you know what? The universe is telling me something right now.
What's that?
You want to hear more of my conversation with Sundiata? Well, just wait for part 2, because we're going to get quote unquote serious. Well, maybe not in Sundiata's case.